Welcome, by the way, in Europe or in Germany or Cologne.
Okay,
So you just came this week from Australia.
That's right.
You are living in Sydney.
I live in Sydney, which is, most people know it's a great town and it's a lovely place to live. But in terms of, let's say, my intellectual stimulation, I still need Europe.
Europe.
And besides from that, all my family lives here. So
when did you move? 10 years ago or so, or longer?
1998. That's
Wow.
already close to 16 years now. And, it's quite a long time. Yeah. And I've been there and working there since quite a lot of years. Yeah. The transition wasn't easy. I found it quite hard in the beginning, specifically because I lost my whole European network, and nobody in Australia was sort of waiting for me to come. So it was quite hard in my early 50s to almost start again and to reinvent myself. Also because the European mind and the Australian minds are quite different in terms of training, in terms of thinking in development. We are so used that people go to do 2, 3, 4 year training to be a coach or to be a supervisor, be a psychotherapist, etc. The mindset in general in Australia is much more, you do a 3-day course and then you are a coach.
Okay.
It is much more shorter
and faster.
And not a lot of depth as a result. In the beginning I had quite a bit of, called super ego type of problems with that. I thought that's terrible, you can't do that. And of course I found my adaptation to it, to not sell 3 or 4 year training courses, but actually to design something for 1 year, 20 days, which is the maximum somebody could say yes to. But to modulate it in such a way that by the end of year 1 people are curious enough to go for another year.
So what is your professional background? What are you doing there? Or what did you do in Europe before you went there?
Yeah. Well, academically, my background is psychologist and sociologist, which have always been the doubleness in my profession. So I've always been half-time psychotherapy practitioner. Also have a psychotherapy license, that sort of thing. And the other half of me has always been interested in groups and systems and organizations, and that's the whole part where I was linked with the populations and the others training. And my work has always been a bit like 50-50, both of that.
Psychotherapy and systemic work consulting group relations?
Yeah.
Your background is also transactional analysis as well?
That's true. That's really a big part of my background. And I did all the... You probably also know that there was so much to learn in the 1970s and 80s. There was like all this sort of excitement about from body work to family systems to Gestalt, transaction analysis, etc., etc. And one is that I was actually involved in many of them, but I choose in the late 70s actually transaction analysis as the modality that I wanted to be more involved in. And specifically also because it had a very good training system. Meaning it had a very well developed and accountable sort of making system of not being trained. But to be a transactional analyst, certified transaction analyst, you need at least 7 years, 6 years of training. To become a trainer and a supervisor in that system, you need another 6 or 7 years of training. So it's quite rigorous, and I like that. So not only it became a leading modality, but also I was involved a lot in the gremian, in the
associations, societies,
etc.
Like the European one and the international?
Yeah, the IATA, the European one, and the ITA, the international one.
So you've been the presidents of those two as well, right?
Yes, both of them. But that's 20 years ago. It's a bit, mid-90s, so it's quite a while. And then in hindsight, after that I've also been involved a lot in the whole training development, curriculum development in that modality. But the other thing is when I did my, what is called CTA, that's the first exam to be a certified transactional analyst, that was actually also when I started my analytic training. meaning analytic training, first of all through the Tavistock and the Leicester conferences, where I went in 84 and 85, that sort of years. And because I always felt that you can be a transaction analyst, but it's not enough. You need more, and still a bit my attitude to most of it, to keep learning and developing. So the whole more analytic side of me became much more then to the focus, and did all sort of additional studies in those areas. So sometimes now people ask me, so what do you do, or how do you call yourself? And I have more and more long story to tell instead of a one syllable sort of professional label.
So you also worked on group relations stuff, right?
Yeah.
If I understand correctly.
Well, we ran, you know, Green from Lohuizen, so we were colleagues for ages, and we ran this institute in the 90s in the Netherlands, but it worked international.
IAS International,
Yeah.
right? Well, what is IAS? What does it stand for?
Institute for the Application of Social Science.
International, right?
International, yeah. We really set it up for training of trainers and coaches, supervisors, managers, came more and more into it. And it was actually a lovely concept, and we worked with an integration of modalities, including group relations, including transaction analysis, including Gestalt and system theory. So these four were the core of the whole training that institute was doing. And
It's a 1 year program or longer?
It was a 2 year
2 year program.
It's a 2 year program, and we attracted increasingly people also from Germany and Switzerland, England.
So it's an international program.
It was an international program. It was very nice. And in that program, we had an annual group relations conference for 5 or 6 days, where we brought our group often together with groups in Germany, the group, and then we had an external director as a director for the conference, and that was great times. It was fantastic learning, and
For the members as well as for the staff, as always.
that's always you know the joke, that we as staff members we don't mind that we don't earn so much as a staff member, because we learn so much still.
We learn so much still.
And
It's a learning, yes.
rich experience to be in the staff.
Yeah. Use transactional models, concept, and theory background, as well as
yes. And you know, when you work with an organization, you often have to really estimate what is the exact way to deal with maybe the question on the foreground, enough that it is possible to build something that you can work with questions in the background later. And very often experiences, when you come too quickly with the too deep stuff, then people will say, thank you very much, you were lovely, but we go somewhere else. And we can stay with them and be with them, and that is probably a very important first phase of connecting and making contact and rapport, or whatever we call it. And the trust is built. Then you can really start to negotiate about how is it when we really would deal with the more deeper issues in this company. Are you interested in that? And then contract to go actually a step further. So yes, I use all these methodologies, but very strategically in the way to work with the client. It's very seldom that you can sell an unprepared organization something like a group relations experience.
Interesting. So the organization has to be prepared for this kind of deep work.
And to be honest, mostly prepared means that someone in the senior management has had either a personal experience, had gone through personal psychotherapy often, and that they really have that developed a sort of an openness for other process than the controllability. And the myth of the controllability that most consultancy work with. That there is more than only a better report or a better structure or whatever we can do. There's something underneath that we must address. Now, you need a bit of enlightened senior managers in charge to see that and to see that potential in order to make it possible. And that is missing it's impossible to sell anything on that level.
It is also part of containment, right? At the end, if you conduct this kind of
Sure.
concepts and conferences
I
inside.
did a containment also within the organization, of course. You know, this Goodman, you know, Pierre Goodman, Pierre? Yeah, Pierre, no? David Goodman.
David Goodman in France.
In France, yeah, he has this concept, what he calls the sustainable triangle, which is the leader in the organization. You have then the main manager, who is the first follower, so to speak, of the leader. And the third part is the consultant. That this containing part within the organization is the leader. And the executive part is the manager, but the container from the outside, who can bring in views and visions that are not so easily to dealt with inside, that is the consultant from outside. I like that concept because it makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense. Sounds really building trust before you go with the deeper concepts and methods. So how long is an assignment for you normally if you work, how do you call it, organizational development projects or processes or consulting process? Or
But maybe a bit of all of them.
okay.
But in general, I would prefer a terminology like organizational consulting and development, whatever. So well, when you have any sort of a large organization, it takes a while before an organization is all warmed up to really go somewhere. And it is, by the time it is there, then it is almost easy. But most of our work, our experience is in the time before to really bring motivation, to inform people about the right thing. And one of the major things I always learned from Burkhardt is information is motivation. And so where managers really inform their staff well, that motivates staff. That creates clarity about the roles, etc., etc. Now, in our role as consultants, we also have a very important part in the parallel process, so to speak, to inform our clients about what we think and about what we think is happening, and etc., in order to motivate them to take part in the process. I always found that part of the whole consulting the most challenging, because it is on the edge almost, as if the organization can say, well, we don't really want to buy this, it's too complex, it is too wishy-washy, that is not clear enough, so thank you very much, but we go somewhere else. Till organizations who really become interested and become curious. And but it is also there is a parallel with psychotherapy. Most people come to psychotherapy, but also most organizations come for consulting when they are in crisis, when there's something wrong that they want to fix. And where also in psychotherapy, often people, when they sort of feel that it is fixed, and it is not so bad anymore, then they stop the therapy. Now, organizations are pretty much the same. Thank you so much.